Okay, has anybody ever heard the song Mr. Bojangles? Or even seen the fast food chicken place called by the same name? Okay. I don't know if we'll get to the chicken part of it, but it is connected to why the chicken crossed the road. So let's just get back to the mouse part of Mr. Bojangles. And we will begin to understand what is the influence of that oral tradition that still circulates in our culture as an entertaining song. Notice that the song is almost always identified with African Americans, if not Africans themselves. And I think that we can see the connection to that by comparing another source from our entertainment culture, which would be a movie entitled Green Mile. And in the movie we have some popular actors, Tom Hanks being one, Michael Duncan Clark being another, and then a little mouse who goes by the name of Mr. Jangles. If we could compare the song Mr. Bojangles and then this little bit of information here about mice gnawing the bowstrings of this great army of Sennacherib in ancient times, then we might be able to figure out how Mr. Jangles gets the bow applied to his name. But just simply by using the backdrop of the movie Green Mile, we can see that Mr. Jangles is a mouse. And then by using the backdrop of the information of the book Worlds in Collision, we can see that this mouse is famous for gnawing bowstrings of great warlords, of great invading armies. So Mr. Bojangles is not the bow. It is someone or something that has defeated those that draw the bow as a weapon of war. Even symbolically speaking, we could understand a very important connection to Osiris Orion, who was also drawing the bow. And we can see the symbolism of many cultures that have, in essence, modeled themselves after that ideology of this dying and resurrecting God, this God of agriculture, and this God of warfare. And then Osiris Orion is remembered by the Greeks as the great hunter. And then we see in Ezekiel chapter 19 symbolisms for this ancient myth of these mighty hunters being conveyed to us as the hunters of men. So you can see that there's an overwhelming influence throughout certain cultures in and around the lands of ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. They would all symbolize themselves after these ancient, great, mighty hunters. We would easily connect them now to the Anunnaki and even their offspring known as the Nephilim, who could be seen as the sons of iron. And I would like to quote Daniel chapter 2 verse 43 concerning this iron mixing itself with the Murray clay. Everybody should know that the Murray clay represents the daughters of men. Murray means muddy, and this is where we get the popular connection to some sort of mythological creature from our modern viewpoint called a mermaid. Supposed to be some sort of woman crossed with a fish. And we know that the Anunnaki were originally seen as ancient fishmen, but as we know, Murray means muddy, which would not be appropriate for these fishmen, it would be appropriate for those that fell, being these fishmen that had fallen to the sophistry of Satan and took it unto themselves to be called gods and bred with the daughters of men, making now this muddy clay, the mermaids that have also become known as the Iron Maidens. Daniel chapter 2, verse 43. And it says they won't always cleave with men, or they won't always cleave together with the descendants of this union of the fallen with mankind. And we can see that that is in preparations now for their population control, their supposed Agenda 21, which is more or less some sort of racial warfare based upon their own confounded notions, their own confused notions of racial superiority, meaning the Aryans, the Assyrians, and many other cultures that have been like-minded after and before them. So you can see that it's not, if we were to take the movie as an example, Mr. Jangles now gets some sort of special power from Michael Duncan Clark, who, as you can see in the movie, is shown with gnats coming out of his mouth at various times. Gnats now, you would have to think about something that Jesus Christ said, where they strain the gnat but yet swallow the camel. Camel symbolizes Satan. We could see in ancient Midrashic texts that it is recorded that Satan rode into the Eden event upon a camel. And that a camel is Came El, at least phonetically as we break it down. And then El is the symbolism for the bull. And then now we can see the symbolization of the Assyrians as bulls. And I know that might be a little bit of a stretch maybe for some of you to keep in your mind right now, but this is the depiction of an ancient Assyrian god, an ancient Assyrian mighty men, which would be the fusion of a man with a bull. And then that would be the popular understanding of the Anunnaki as they mated with the daughters of men, being then symbolized as cows or heifers. So we can kind of see that this Osiris Orion, being connected even with the Iron Cross, now the crossing of the genetics, the crossing of the sons of Iron, the sons of Orion, with the daughters, the muddy daughters of men, even symbolizing and sponsoring the influence from mermaids to this day. Astounding. So what else has it sponsored and inspired that we don't understand the original root from? Well, I'm telling you, Mr. Bojangles. So think about Mr. Clark with the gnats coming out of his mouth. As I said, Jesus Christ says that they would rather strain the gnat but yet swallow the camel. So who would the gnats be? Well, the gnats we're going to find in connection to Venus flies. Venus implies the sacred feminine, or at least the union from those that believe they are special, coming from this sacred femininity, which is really nothing less than the fallen crossing themselves with the primitive daughters of men, hardly sacred, more or less fallen, more or less a grave mistake, in which has fostered many people that believe themselves to be racially superior and have the right to rule with force and oppression and even death and war over their brothers and sisters of mankind. So Michael Duncan Clark, unfortunately in the movie, dies. He's given some sort of penalty of death for something which, ironically enough, he's really, in essence, being shown as innocent of. But Mr. Duncan Clark has some sort of special power, at least being seen by the people who imply this by the making of the movie about it. And that he touches the Mr. Jangles mouse, and then he touches the character that Tom Hanks plays, and then they, in essence, receive some sort of longevity because of something happening to Mr. Duncan Clark that is even further symbolized as his own death. So my point here to digest would be, historically, that's not the way that it happened. Is that the mouse does not die. That the mouse is saved. That the people who are seen as a scourge are saved by this fire blast from the sky. In essence, what goes around comes around. And that Mr. Clark, being symbolized even in connection to the mouse, to the gnats, does not pass away,